The largest platform for investments and partnerships on the African continent is taking place here in Algiers. It is the Inter-African Trade Fair 2025. The fair is showcasing the opportunities across several sectors and also accelerating the implementation of the AFCFTA. By hosting the fair, Algiers is becoming a meeting point where Africa's economic potential, its youth, and its startups are in the spotlight, reflecting the continent's drive for deeper integration. And one of the drivers of this integration is the PAPSS, the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, which allows cross-border payment with local currencies. To tell us more about this system, we're having one of its engineers, Mike Ogbalu. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. You're the CEO of the PAPSS. For those who are unfamiliar with it, what is it and why was it created?
So Africa has suffered under several types of challenges. And one of them is that Africa has been balkanized, broken into 54 African current countries. And they have different rules for trading, they have different currencies, and therefore making it difficult for African countries to trade and to exchange goods and services with their neighboring African countries. It's become so easy for them to trade with the rest of the world rather than to trade with themselves. The challenge with that is that without trading with our neighbors, without trading amongst ourselves, we don't build prosperity. So what has happened over time is that because we've had different rules of trading, we've had different currencies for exchanging goods and services, it was impossible for us to trade. So with the coming on stream of the AFCFTA, it became clear that Africa needed a payment system that is fit for purpose, that will allow Africa to be able to trade in spite of the fact that we have different currencies. So in 2018, we started putting together what we call the design principles, which was to say, we want to create a payment system. How do we know when we have achieved it? And we said we wanted a payment system that will be able to allow the use of each of the local currencies, wanted a payment system that will be instant, wanted a payment system that will have standardized rules and make it seamless. So PAPSS is a payment infrastructure that connects all of Africa and allows each of the countries to pay in their local currencies, pay instantly, and makes it easy for them to exchange goods and services on the continent.
On the continent. Now, why has cross-border trade within Africa been so costly and complex until now?
And this is a fantastic question. Now, just think of a small tailor who has to buy fabrics from, say, Senegal. He needs to make payments to someone in Senegal. He has to, first of all, buy a third currency. He initiates a payment. It takes about a few days, and in those few days, that payment instruction travels outside of the continent and then comes back on the continent before being delivered 3 to 5 days to the destination. Those are 3, 4, 5 days that he would have used to turn around his inventory, to sell more, to create more. Okay? He's using it to wait to confirm payment. Secondly, because the payment has to travel outside of the continent before coming back on the continent, it increases costs because anyone who the payment touches, it's a point of cost, an additional cost to the transaction. Thirdly, is that the foreign currency that he has to convert the payment to make it is not even available. So what all of these friction points have done is to increase the cost of doing business on the African continent. So if you look at most of the, say, remittance corridors around the globe, you find that some of the most expensive corridors exist here on Africa. So what you find is that the poorest ends up paying the most for making cross-border payments. So all of this adds to the difficulty of Africa doing business with itself. Now, the AFCFTA has aggregated the rules and has created a common set of rules. It's actually a silver bullet for the continent, the AFCFTA. However, the AFCFTA will depend on this payment system gaining grounds, to be able to achieve its objectives. So that's...
In practical terms, how does the PAPSS work? For instance, in a transaction, let's say, that needs to be done between Algeria and Ghana. How does it work?
Oh, fantastic. So maybe I should step back a bit and tell you what we have built, and I'll tell you how it works. So we built an instant payment system, which is world-class in every sense. It's a system that uses the ISO 20022 messaging standard. It's a system that has all the bells and whistles of a globally standard payment system. So at the core is that instant payment system, and we built around it a number of governance, risk, and control systems, from AML to sanction screening to fraud management. And each of these tools, we were deliberate to make sure that we had the best that you could find globally. That whole system, we built around it a number of governance organs, which first is the PAPSS Governing Council, which has the central bank governors of participating countries and representatives of Afrexim Bank, the AFDB, the AFCFTA, and the African Union sitting on that governing council, and that's the highest decision-making organ. And then we have the payment systems oversight, which is a group of payment directors from each of the central banks, providing direct oversight over the payment system.
They make sure to supervise everything in relation to the payments.
Absolutely, because we are not just a fintech. We're a financial market infrastructure, so the trust and confidence on the platform is just as critical as the technology running the platform. And then what we now did is to certify the system to the highest levels, ISO 27001, ISO 27701, ISO 22301. So all these certifications give confidence to all our participants that we will do things as professionally as possible to make sure that the payment system is not compromised. Now, we've taken all of this, connected central banks, we've connected commercial banks. So 118 central banks and 152 commercial banks connected. We also have about 14 switches, 7 of which are national switches, also connected to this payment system. What that does is that a transaction can now, speaking about how it works, you can walk into, for example, any participating bank branch. You can use any of the digital channels of the participating banks, and you can initiate a transaction in your local currency. You will be debited in your local currency. The instruction is passed on to PAPSS. When it comes to PAPSS, PAPSS takes it through all of its governance systems, through its anti-money laundering system, through its sanction screening system, through its fraud management system. And then it sends it across to the receiving bank or the receiving institution. The receiving institution is able to also validate that the account that we're sending these monies to exists, and also that they are already KYC'd, okay? And once that is confirmed, the money is delivered into the destination account, and all of this happens in no more than 120 seconds. In fact, our commitment to the market was 120 seconds, but since we went live, we have been doing these transactions in a total of 7 seconds, an average of 7 seconds.
So this is the saving in time. What about the saving in cost that we expect from this new system?
So we have achieved this in multiple ways. First is the fact that we have totally eliminated the need for correspondent banks outside of the continent. So
No
the
more
transactions
outside
don't go outside of Africa. They start in Africa, they are processed in Africa, and they are terminated in Africa. So first of all, the costs that Africa would typically pay to these correspondent banks has been eliminated. Secondly is we have also taken a knife to the costs of processing. So today we process transactions in a way that gives you a minimum of about 30–40% savings on the cost of what you would have done with any other payment system. And in fact, for some systems, our cost is as low as 1% of what those alternatives will charge. So we've achieved costs or reduction in the cost of doing business by lowering the cost of processing, cutting out those correspondent banks, okay? And also, we have eliminated any cost for joining for participating banks. They do not pay any money to join. We have removed all the fees, monthly, quarterly, all those fees have been removed in such a way that the cost is low to the banks.
So they are permanently removed, the fees to join?
Yes, that is correct.
It's a permanent thing, or is it just for now, for the beginning?
So our aim is to make it permanent, but then as we go along, for everything we do, we go back to our governing councils to get a formal approval for us to proceed.
And how quickly do you see the network expanding across the continent, and in which sectors also do you expect the strongest impact?
We plan by the end of 2026 to have covered about 80% of the continent, okay? We think that by that end of 2026, we'll have between 300 and 400 of the largest financial institutions across Africa fully connected. We think that the biggest impact will be for the SMEs. Actually, the future of Africa, the future of growth on the continent is these SMEs. And we're also very passionate about women doing business. Not because of any of the fancy reasons that people promote, but we know that women are sort of nurturers. They nurture, and therefore, if Africa wants a good chance of actually growing its economies, it needs to make sure that it supports women to actually actively participate in its economies. So we think that for the SMEs, it will be a big winner, and we're already seeing some of those impacts. So for example, a small shoemaker in a small place in Banjul, Gambia, who before this time saw his market as the 2 million people in Gambia, okay? With this payment rail, he's able to see how he is able to sell to 1.3, 1.4 billion Africans and not worry about how his payment is settled into his account.
Now, how does PAPSS enhance Africa's financial sovereignty, especially in reducing reliance on external currencies like the dollars or the euros?
So how we do it is, again, let me say that our agenda is not, we're not interested in de-dollarization.
Okay.
We think that Africa will still need foreign currencies to be able to trade with the rest of the world. But the challenge that we have today is that Africa doesn't have enough of these third-party currencies even to trade with itself. So what we've done is to flip the model, and we've said, okay, when Africa trades with itself, for the most part, let it pay with its local currency. Where there is now a difference in terms of the balance of trade, we can now look for a third-party currency to settle the difference.
Okay.
So for all 80 to 90% of its transactions with itself, it should be able to pay with its local currency. So in that way, we're reducing Africa's dependence And then when they have these third-party global currencies, they're able to use it to meet other needs that they might have, and also to be able to trade with the rest of the world.
Looking ahead, are there any new features, partnerships, or upcoming rollouts you can share with us that you did here at the fair?
So I want to have, in most of our conversation, I've spoken about our instant payment system.
Yes.
And I would like to also now speak about two other offerings that we have, and why we think it is critical for the continent. We've had situations where businesses, African businesses, do business in other African countries, but when they earn revenues, it gets sterilized in those countries because they don't have access to FX to repatriate their earnings. What we've done in that place is we've created an African currency marketplace. Basically, it allows me, for example, in Egypt, to come on board and say, oh, okay, I have this amount of Egyptian pounds. I'll be happy to let go of my Egyptian pounds for this much Gambian dalasi, or this much Ghanaian cedis. So on that platform, large corporates are able to actually trade the local currencies that they have, for other local currencies. Now, this platform has zero intervention from any third-party foreign currency. This platform is local currency to local currency.
100%
100%. So, for example, to bring it in a term that you can relate with, just think of an airline, maybe in an East African country, who is selling tickets in a West African country, say Nigeria, and then think of a major Nigerian conglomerate who is selling, for example, flour or wheat or whatever in East Africa. So in East Africa, he has a lot of Kenyan shillings that he has earned. He cannot bring home. And the airline has a lot of naira that he has earned in Nigeria that he's not able to bring home. This platform allows them to place their offers on that platform. Once it is matched, the airline in Kenya gets Kenyan shillings,
and vice versa.
And then the conglomerate in Nigeria gets the Nigerian naira in Nigeria. So it's a fantastic platform that we have seen how it has already started helping the airline industry. We had, for example, an airline that was almost shutting down its operations in a few countries because it has had so much monies in that country that is not able to repatriate. In fact, it was so bad that they started buying property, because leaving the money just sitting there meant that every now and again it gets devalued, and therefore they have maybe $20 million equivalent in local currency. And once it gets devalued, suddenly they have 3 million, 5 million.
It's a loss.
And it's a huge loss. So what we have done is to allow them to be able to actually trade these currencies. So they put the currencies in the platform, they get matched, and it's swapped.
What's the name of this platform?
It's called the PAPSS Africa Currency Marketplace.
Marketplace.
Yes. The second thing that we did is we've introduced a card scheme. And this for me is quite revolutionary. And again, having visited here in Algiers, I see such immense opportunities. And by the way, this is a very beautiful city. So what we've done is, going around different African countries, you see the dominance of some global card schemes in most of African markets. Now, what they have done is that when transactions are done in Africa, these transactions still travel all the way to some Western country and comes back to the continent. What it means is that We saw what happened when Russia had some issue.
The sanctions?
Yes, and suddenly all the card schemes in that market stopped functioning.
Yes.
We don't think that Africa should be exposed to that kind of risk. So what we've done is we've created a world-class card scheme, and we've made it available to as many countries.
How many?
Many.
So far?
So far we have two. We've signed up with a country in West Africa, which we'll be formally announcing, and a country in East Africa, which we'll also be formally announcing. What this does is that when you have a domestic card scheme in a market, it significantly lowers the cost of card payments in that market. In my former world, I used to run a card scheme out of Nigeria, and I used to tell my colleagues from the West, I said, look, it's okay for you to beat me anywhere else in the world.
But not in Africa.
But not in, well, then I used to say in Nigeria.
Nigeria.
But today, I'm saying it's okay for you to beat me everywhere else in the world, but you shouldn't beat me in Africa. So this card scheme will also allow, it's also a switch of switches, which we've created that will allow cards issued in one part of Africa to be able to be accepted in other parts of Africa. So it's actually something that will be very revolutionary for the continent, and we're very excited about it.
That's a fantastic one. Could we see PAPSS integrated with mobile money and fintech platforms in the near future, since we're talking about new projects?
That's fantastic, and I love all that you have asked, because it's actually leading me to what I want to talk about. So it's brilliant. We've started now, we've gotten approval from our governance organs, and we are now integrating. We've opened up the door for integrating with fintechs, mobile money operators, and other wallet service providers. We have created a model where they can either integrate directly to PAPSS, but settle through the commercial banks, or integrate through some form of a national switch, but settle through a commercial bank, or the third model, where they actually integrate to the commercial banks, and then the commercial banks integrate into PAPSS. What we've done is to build so much flexibility into our system, such that the central banks have the flexibility to determine how they want operators in each of their markets to be able to play within PAPSS.
Very interesting. Now, finally, what is your message to African leaders, businesses, investors, and why PAPSS matters for the continent's future?
I think that PAPSS empowers our leaders, okay? When you have a platform that can seamlessly allow you to retain the sovereignty of your own currency, but be able to trade with the rest of Africa, we're actually getting closer and closer to a single market. So PAPSS is actually that tool that will defend the continent against any types of geopolitical aggression. So we do not have any other choice. And by the way, PAPSS doesn't believe in cannibalizing all the other payment systems that exist on the continent. We think there's room for as many payment, but what we do is to actually make sure that we get them to be able to interoperate with each other. So if you like whatever payment system you have, keep it, but connect to PAPSS as well. Do you understand? So in that way, we can bring efficiency to payments on the continent. So PAPSS is actually that defense that the continent will have, to defend its economy, defend or protect it against shocks, global shocks that can actually disrupt economies on the continent. So my message to them is, this is the time for us to create and make sure that PAPSS works. This is something that we have to be jealous for, and to defend it with everything that we've got and make sure that it works. There's no payment system that is perfect anywhere in the world. At least they never start out being perfect. But if we believe in this system, which is our own, and we support it, it will be the biggest thing that the world has ever seen. And it will drive Africa's economies and ensure prosperity on the African continent.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your valuable insights, and thank you for your time. Mr. Mike?
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks
you
for having me.
And thank you, dear viewers, for following this interview. See you in the next ones.